here is basically I will be going into talking about entrepreneurs and basically going more into the reason why a lot of entrepreneurs and small business fail. And one of those is one, not having an exit strategy or plan. Most people go into business on several factors, and one of them is, let's say, for example, they're working at their job and they get laid off, so now they want to start a business. The other one is maybe their job is cut back on their hours, so now they want to go out on their own, and they're acting on their emotions and without having a plan. So it's very important that you do a lot of research before you do anything. And the reason why I said that is because it's a wonderful thing to work for yourself. However, if you don't have a plan and you lack the knowledge, what is the knowledge? Going out there and and uh, studying and reading many books. Because some people come from a family where they are entrepreneurs and they inspire and moved by that. And there are some who are former drug dealers or who hustle out in the street and became very successful. For example, someone like 50 Cent, who became very successful. Um, and then there are some people who've gone to college, got their MBA, Masters in Business Administration. So they got their degree in college. And majority of those people are either working for someone or they will go out on their own. In today's world, a lot of entrepreneurs are inspired to do for self, to create and own their own business. And many of them have the skill, however, they don't have the education because there's the one part, there's skill. So I want to give you an example. Let's say someone who decides to, they want to go and become, they want to own a hair salon, right? However, there's the business side of the hair salon, legal entity structure. I say, for example, an LLC. That's one part. Creating a website. Three, a business email. Four, having a business location. Five, a business phone number. For example, like from Verizon, will be one of them, or Ring Central, that will show up in the yellow pages and the white pages. Having a Duns and Bradstreet number, which is a 9-digit number, which generates a business credit profile. Um, Having a business plan of how they're going to acquire clients. Location is very important. Where that location, how much is going to be the rent on a monthly basis? How much is the equipment? The people that they bring in, as far as the hairstyles, they're going to bring them in as either employees or contractors. The other part is supplies and material supplies, beauty supplies. Where are you going to get these supplies from? Are you going to be based off of cash? You're going to pay with cash? Are you going to be able to pay with credit? Or are you going to be able to pay with terms? What is terms? You buy something and then they send you an invoice and you pay it terms 30 days. And if you pay it back before the due date, what are you doing? Is you're establishing business credit with a vendor who has extended you credit in terms of what they call a trade line. So I will be talking about that. I'll be talking about also um, you cannot get business financing or business credit cards or lines of credit if you are a new business. There's a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you can be in business for you can get a loan as a new LLC." Do not believe all that. What you need to do basically is this: if you are a new business, if you're trying to get what business loans, lines of credit, and credit cards. It all depends on where you go at. And there are four tiers. And this is what most people do when they first start out. people will go to the banks. So there's different levels of financial institutions. So tier one is the national banks, such as Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. What does that mean? That means they're everywhere, all 50 states. They're all across America. If you go to New York, Chase dominates. There's so many Chase banks in New York, along with Bank of America. In Pennsylvania, you have Wells Fargo. Now you have Chase. You have Bank of America. So those are the national banks with the most locations. The second tier is your regional banks, like PNC, Key Bank, um, Citizen Bank. These are banks that are not found um, is not found across the United States in many different states. There's so few of them. So these are called regional banks. The third tier is credit unions. The fourth tier is subprime banks. So, these are the things that a lot of entrepreneurs lack because they don't have the blueprint on what they're supposed to do or what they call a checklist or what they're supposed to do. The checklist is out there. However, a lot of entrepreneurs don't turn to these type of resources to give them the blueprint and the instructions on how to set things up. Um, so if you think you're gonna go in business and be in business less than 3 years and get a business loan, a line of credit, and credit cards, it's gonna be very hard. Now, here's a recipe for disaster. You go in business, you have lack of cash or cash option or resources. Meaning that what? Lack of cash could be your own cash, right? Lack of cash could be you don't have investors, like hard money lenders or angel investors. You don't have family and friends that have the money to invest into you. So that's a lack of cash and a lack of resources. The other part is if you have bad credit to go along with it, bad personal credit to go along with lack of cash resources, that is a recipe for disaster. Because when you're going for a business loan, there's two components. There is business guarantor and personal guarantor. Business guarantor means that the business is able to get a loan without the owner or the owner's personal social security number. I'll say it once again. There are two types: business guarantor and personal guarantor. And I'm going to explain the difference between the two of them. So now you are a business and you want to go get a loan, right? Now the business itself have not been established for a long period of time, doesn't have any business credit at all, doesn't have business vendor trade line. So what's a vendor trade line? A trade line is from a vendor who extends you credit on terms like Quill, Staple, those are for office supplies, Home Depot, and Lowe's, which is for what? Supplies and materials, right? For your home or contractor or construction companies. So I'm only mentioning those as an example. Dell Technologies. If you have an office and you have an account with Dell Technologies, this is where you will purchase your laptops and your desktops and your printers for the office, for you and your employees. And they might give you a line of credit of whatever. They might give you a line of credit based on what? Number of factors. Years in business. That's one. They might go to Duns and Bradstreet, right? So what is Duns and Bradstreet? But Duns and Bradstreet is a business credit. Duns and Bradstreet is a business credit profile or business where a lot of businesses report about your business to Duns and Bradstreet, Equifax, and experience on the business side. So if your business have not been established, which is like 3 years or less, it's gonna be very hard for you to get a business loan because the business itself does not fit the criteria to take out the loan under the business. So if you're going for a business loan and it requires you to what? Use your social security number, that's called personal guarantor. That means you are personally guaranteed or personally responsible for the loan that the business takes out. Versus if the business is established, the business can take out a loan without you giving up your social security number. To giving up your social security number. The owner or owners or shareholders. So that's very important. So it's very important if you're going to start a business, you want to make sure that your personal credit will be the one that will fund the business. So I mentioned that once again. These are the things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't know. There's a lot into this when you're going out to create your business. And that's very important that you understand a lot of things because what you don't want to do, I've seen disasters where people have stepped out on faith with a lack of knowledge, lack of resources, and they don't last long in business. They last less than a year because your business had to have funding in order for you to do what? Expenses generate revenue, revenue generate expenses. I'll say it again. Expenses generates revenue, revenue generates expenses. Because without revenue, you cannot pay your expenses. And without expenses, you cannot earn revenue. I'll say it again. Without revenue, you cannot pay your operating costs or operating expenses. And without expenses, you cannot generate revenue. This is why this is important that you understand. Because there's a lot of people that say, well, you can get a business loan or business line of credit, a line of credit. You can get credit cards. You can get a bank loan or uh, credit union loan. There's a lot of steps involved. So I will be talking about this and why it's very important that when you start out a business, there's a lot of things involved. There's a legal entity structure. Are you going to be an LLC, partnership, S Corp, C Corp, nonprofit? What is your legal entity structure? The next thing is a tax ID number. And for LLC, there's something called an Articles of Organization. For corporations, it's called an Articles of Incorporation. An S Corp allows you to have 100 shareholders, domestic. You cannot have shareholders outside of that, which are international, or your S Corp will be revoked. A C Corp has unlimited shareholders. Then you have an LLC single member, which is the sole owner of an LLC, or they call them a managing member. Then a multi-member LLC is considered a partnership. So you have to decide the legal entity structure. The next step is the name of your business. Once you got that, then the next step is once the LLC is filed. I'm only using the LLC as an example. It depends on the state you're in. So once the LLC is filed, then you will see what they call articles of organization from the state. Now you take that. The next step is you got to go onto irs.gov and apply for a tax ID, or in other words, is EIN, Employer Identification Number, which is a tax ID number, which is a 9-digit number. Once you get that, you can create it as a PDF and print out right away, or you can have the IRS mail it to you, which takes longer. You take your tax ID from the IRS, your articles of organization, right? And you can open up a business bank account. And now, where you choose to open your bank account, I will recommend any entrepreneur who's starting out, who don't have a lot of money, whose credit is average, good, sometimes it's poor. I would recommend all entrepreneurs that are starting out that you go to a credit union. Do not go to a national bank like Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, those big banks. Why? Because they're going to charge you a lot of fees. And they're not going to have the type of program that you're going to need to help your business grow. I'll say it once again. If you're starting out, you either go to a regional bank, which is a local community bank, or I would highly recommend that you go to a credit union. Why? Because you can open up a, you have to, when you go to the credit union, you have to take the 3 documents to open up an account because you have to be approved. So those 3 documents are operating agreement, and the operating agreement is the agreement of operation of how the LLC is going to be run, who are the members, and what their role in the LLC. The second document is the Articles of Organization, which is for the state. And the third document is a tax ID. So when you're going to open up an account in a credit union, you have to have the Articles of Organization, tax ID from the IRS, and an operating agreement. You have to have those 3 documents to open up a checking account and a savings account in a credit union. Now, there are some credit unions that are very hard to get it, but if you make a donation to the charity organization that the credit union requests that you do, that's one way in. Some of them, like for example, the Navy Federal Credit Union, you might have to have a family member in order to join that credit union. But there are credit unions like Truemark Credit Union, American Heritage Federal Credit Union. There are many different credit unions that are in your state. So I will recommend any entrepreneur or any startup business that's starting out. If you don't want to pay monthly maintenance fees, because a monthly maintenance fee can be based on your daily balance and your monthly balance. If you don't meet those 2 criteria, a bank like Wells Fargo, Chase, and Bank of America, they are going to charge you anywhere from $16 to $25 per month on monthly maintenance. And when you're first starting out, you might not be in a position based on your revenue to what? Take on these type of fees. Now, the reason why I also recommend the credit union is because they have what they call secure credit cards. What is a secure credit card? A secure credit card requires you, if the business has no credit, you can get what they call a business secure credit card when you're dealing with the credit union. And what is a business secure credit card? That means you have to put down a deposit. I'm going to use, for example, $300. $300 is your security deposit, which is collateral. If you default on your credit card and unable to pay it back, they will take your security deposit and use it for the balance. But one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to mess up your secure credit card and have what they call a charge off and be in the checklist system. So the credit union is very strict. Where if you go to a regional bank, a national bank, you might go to Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, those are national bank. If you go to the second tier, which is a regional bank, someone like Key Bank, First National Bank, First Trust Banks, PNC, TD Bank, those could be considered regional banks because there are not that many of them in a lot of states, or in your state. So they don't require you to bring in. They require you to bring in what? Articles of organization and tax ID. You don't have to take an operating agreement, but with the credit union, you do, and you should have an operating agreement because the operating agreement, as far as the LLC, that's one of the requirements to also be in compliance. So I will be talking about that, and I'll go into that because, as I mentioned before, when you're first starting out, there's a lot of things that you don't know. Um, you can have the passion, however, you might not have the business knowledge to sustain over a period of time. So that's very important. Um, so I will be talking about that. I made a lot of mistakes when I first came out. However, I had the ability to build my business to the point where now I have the very things that I need. Um, but it's very important. If you have lack of cash resources, and you have poor credit, that's a recipe for disaster because every business or everyone needs funding. And if you're unable to get funding or credit extended to you, you won't be in business long unless you have a very high revenue business that earns a lot of cash that will sustain you over time. However, if you're just starting out and you have a lack of cash resources or options, and you have poor credit, you're not going to be in business long because you need funding. You need revenue. You need funding. If you're into hair supplies or if you're selling skin skin products, many people are into the organic supply, organic beauty supplies. You have to have money to buy the supplies. You have to have money to buy the bottles, okay, or jars, or anything that you use as far as baskets. Let's say, for example, Valentine's Day, and you're into selling beauty supplies, but you're in the organic section, and you make your own supplies. So there's shea butter, cocoa butter, different type of butter, mango butter. So now you need jars to put the shea butter into. It can be plastic bottles, plastic jars, or glass jars. The majority are in plastic jars with the top. So you might have to buy that at a wholesale, where you might get like a quantity of 12. Now you have to pack the what? Shea butter in each jar. In each jar. Then you need the labels. Where are you going to get your labels from? So these are all the supplies for you for your business. Then you're going to need what? A table. How are you going to sell your stuff? Are you going to sell it wholesale, retail, direct consumer? How are you going to sell your product or get your product out to the public? There's something called what? Supply and demand. How are you going to meet supply and demand? You have to have cash on reserve. Now, if you have credit in the form of, let's say you go to a supplier who sells you the very thing that you need. They might sell you the jars for the shea butter. You might have candles, right? Different scented candles. So you have to sell certain things that will uphold the candle, right? So whatever the supply that you need, you might have to go to a vendor. Now that vendor is going to want what? Cash on delivery, meaning that what? You're going to have to first pay the cash in order to get the supplies. But let's suppose you have good credit. You say to this vendor, I want to fill out a credit application. They're going to look for certain things. They might pull your business credit report, or they might pull your what? Dun and Bradstreet credit profile to see if you're credit worthy and trustworthy, and see that how do you ever pay back your bills, right? So credit worthy and trustworthy, and if you are accepted with that vendor based on that credit application, then it will come down to terms. What is terms? You go to a supplier, you buy shea butter, you're buying candles, you're buying jars, you're buying bottles for the oils, and that vendor now, when they first sold it to you, you had to pay them cash or credit, and they will give you supplies. Now that vendor extends you credit, which is what? Vendor credit, which is based on terms. Because they ran your business credit, they ran your business credit to see if you have any bankruptcies or any liens, any charge of. How do you pay vendors, right? Are there any other vendors reporting to your Dun and Bradstreet? So now you are accepted. You make your first order now. They send you the supplies, and within 10 days, they're going to send you an invoice. You have 30 days from the date of the purchase to pay that invoice. Now, what that's called terms of credit. That also allows you to what? Manage your cash flow. Because you don't want more going out than coming in. If more is going out, which is called expenses, at a rapid rate versus how much you're getting back, getting in, which is revenue or income for the product that you sold, that's not good because you got more money going out faster versus coming in. So now if you have terms of credit and you have 30 days to pay it back, now what happens is that helps your cash flow. That helps. That gives you the ability, you got 30 days, 29 days to now come up and pay that vendor for the supplies that you order. So those are things that I talk about. Um, and once you understand that, then you're ready to go. But the main thing is, as I mentioned, growing up as kids, we was never taught. I was never taught about credit or taxes or finances. My mother never had a checking account. She never wrote a check. So during that time, we know where I came from, which was the we call the urban cities or the ghetto or the hood. And the urban cities or the ghettos or the hoods, there were no banks. We had what they call a check cashing place. So now you would get your check, go to the check cashing place, they would charge you a fee for cashing your checks. When I got my first job, I didn't have a bank account. I went to the check cashing place. If my job, I didn't have a bank account, so I would go to the check cashing place and pay a. I had to pay the check cashing place a fee for cashing my checks. So my mother would they would go to the check cashing place where they would pay their utility bills. At that time it was Con Ed, Brooklyn Gas, pay their Con Ed bill for electric and their gas bill. If they had a telephone through Bell Atlantic, they would pay their telephone bill. They would get money orders. They would wire money through MoneyGram or Western Union. So there was a lot that you could do at a check cashing place, right? So that way, people in the hood or the ghetto urban cities, because why? We didn't have a lot of banks in our community. So we had to go to the check cashing place. For, like I mentioned, to cash the check. The check cashing place is going to charge you for what? Cashing the check and paying your bills at check cashing place. They're going to charge you. Until I got a bank account, and then I started to receive what? Either direct deposit or a paper check where I could deposit into my checking account. So my mother never had a bank account. She never wrote checks. She didn't teach me how to read bank statements or write a check. So these are things that I didn't learn. But that's no excuse for when you become an adult. You can learn. You have to apply yourself. That's why the Lord said what? Study to show thyself approved. Rightly divide the word. So that's why it's important that you study and get the knowledge. You have to read. And many adults today don't read. That's why they lack comprehension. We talk about children that are reading at a fourth grade reading level. How about these adults? What grade level are they reading? Once you stop doing something, you lose the skill of it. That's why it's important that you read. And when you read, you're able to comprehend. And that's one of the biggest problems today. Lack of communication comes from lack of comprehension. Why? Because many adults do not read when they get out of high school. Even when they was in school, they didn't read a lot. Or maybe their parents didn't read to them. My mother never read to me. But I love reading. I love knowledge. Right? So that's not an excuse. But I will be talking about um, what you need to be doing as far as when you're starting out in a business. And that's very important. Um, how to set your business up. Because you're going to go through trials and tribulations when you first start out. That's not everybody. Everybody don't go through that. Everybody start out different. That's why when someone tell you their story, you don't know what they had to do to get to where they got. You don't know what they had to do to become successful. All right. So it ain't pieces of cream for everybody. But I will be talking about that more. So this is Mr. Smith, TV Entertainment. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at Mr. Mr. TV Entertainment at gmail.com. Again, if you want to reach out to me, to my email is Mr. Smith. I'll say it to you. Mr. TV Entertainment at gmail.com. Thank you. And have a wonderful day.